Hello, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, maybe for some of you. Um, Welcome to TTRPG. We are a channel dedicated to the representation of marginalized folks in the tabletop role playing community. Our goal is to make safe places for marginalized folks to play. And today, we are doing one of our game designer showcases, and we will be playing Flame in the Abyss. It's really important that you take a look at um, the content warnings for this show because we will be exploring grief, and specifically we will be talking about grief for with relationships related to mothers. So with that, quick round of introductions. I am Nikki. I use she, her pronouns. And here at the channel, I am the producer. I'm also a fifth grade teacher and currently am trying to raise funds for my Donors Choose, link in chat. And it would be awesome if you are able to support or share with people that you know, because otherwise I will buy all that stuff myself and it's expensive to be a teacher. Anyway, so that's all. Christiana, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll let Angela take it away and talk about her game.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Christiana or Chris, whichever is better for you is fine for me. I stream a lot in the TTRPG space. Hopefully, we'll start streaming on my own, just doing some, fun game stuff. And I am also becoming a TTRPG writer. So that's been really fun to start that process. So hopefully you can look out for me in some future game stuff. I am also starting a podcast called The Whispering Pines, and it's a horror, low rolling, just a lot of role playing, um, horror, and really campy things that I think a lot of people enjoy. So I will post more about that when it's time to upload the episodes. But yeah, that's it.
Hello there, lovelies, to any folks who are able to take the time to tune into us today, or any folks who might be watching this in a VOD or video. My name is Angela. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the designer behind Flame in the Abyss. This is very much a love letter to folks dealing with various issues around grief, and also a bit of a processing game for my own personal loss of my own mother a few years back when she passed away in the midst of everything happening in the world right now. So this is, as we said before, a very difficult game in terms of its content and subject matter. The themes can be very heavy. So if ever you feel in the course of us doing this game that you need to step out or need to entirely just be away from this all, I entirely understand. This is not to be taken lightly, and your well-being always beats out staying and watching the game and sitting through the discomfort unnecessarily. So, with that being said before, this is Flame in the Abyss, which is very much about exploring memory, grief, trauma, and what it means to carry on. So, sort of leading into that, this opening part of this will be just a little bit of us reading from the text. I realize this can feel like it's a bit to listen to, but this is to establish the groundwork so that you as viewers and listeners and that we as players can be working on a similar ground. So with that being said, if my players would turn to the spot that's in their games that say the introduction and premise and just take turns one after the other, we'll just be reading each section. I'll say the order is myself, then Christiana, then Nikki. So introduction and premise. You are a traveler, alone and wandering through a world that does not care about you. As much as you try to push on without letting hardship weigh you down, you nevertheless struggle. And now, in the midst of your journey, you have experienced a loss whose influence will not let you be.
This loss has led you to this place, the abyss, an area where memories become fractured and emotions take on lives of their own. No matter where you look, the world you knew before this has all but faded away, eclipsed by the presence of your loss.
In order to escape the abyss, you must face your loss head on and speak with your emotions, which have now manifested into reality.
While each will offer you a perspective on what happened before you arrived, only you can decide what will let you move on.
Only you can become the flame in the abyss, lighting the path towards your recovery and your salvation.
Very nice. So that is the basic premise of the game that we will be working with today, is we'll be exploring what it means to find our way through the abyss. So I'm being only mildly distracted by said pet right next to this. No, it's good.
She
it's
has
good.
a penchant for knowing when like things are about to get heavy, and she will not leave me alone.
She knows.
She knows.
Hello there, support doggo. So we'll move on to the how to play section just to give us, and we'll let Nikki start off and then keep going with the same sort of order we've been doing.
Perfect. How to play. Flame in the Abyss is a 3-person GM-less game about memories, grief, and accepting loss. However, instead of playing 3 distinct characters, you will each be playing 3 aspects of one main character represented by 3 different player roles. You should set aside anywhere from 2 to 3 hours for playtime.
You'll need at least one copy of this game for players to use a 4-sided die, D4, for starting the game, and a 6-sided die, D6, for choosing themes and resolving indecisiveness.
Throughout the course of play, all 3 players will take on one of 3 different emotional aspects of the main character, each with their own focus and motivation. Each aspect will have their own perspective on how the loss affected the main character. However, while the first 2 players can help establish the details related to the loss, the 3rd player will always have final say on what the main character took away from the experience.
The 3rd player does not have to ultimately be telling the truth about what happened. In fact, you should assume the main character has lost track of what actually happened. The important takeaway for the 3rd player is that this is what they choose for the main character to process from the loss in order to move on.
Play happens in 4 parts. The first to establish what the loss was, the second to develop details concerning the loss, the third to establish how the main character comes to terms with their loss, and the fourth to help players decompress from the game.
Above all else, remember this. The story will always end in the main character leaving the abyss, making peace with their loss. How they reflect on their loss and to what degree they reflect, positively or negatively, will be for the table to determine.
So this is a game about ultimately this will be a moment of growth and carrying on. But in what way we will all carry on will be up for us to decide in the course of play. And so we have talked beforehand about lines and veils. So for anyone not familiar, even though we use them quite often on the channel, lines and veils tend to refer to content that we kind of want to be much more careful with. When it's a line, it's an area of we don't want to engage with that content either for this session or at all as players throughout the course of what might come up in a campaign. Veils might be a little bit more akin to a fade to black kind of moment where we'll mention it, but we need to pass through. Now, this game will explicitly deal with things like grief, trauma, and potentially areas of abuse, food anxieties, and a lot of other issues around that. So bear in mind that if you do have history with a lot of those kinds of issues, might want to gauge for yourself whether or not you want to keep watching. It's a lot, but we try and approach it in a way that lets us know that we can stop, get up out of our seats, and take a breather if we need to. And also for myself, I also designed in this game as acknowledgement of a lot of our streaming communities, red, yellow, and green cards as well. And also a mechanic taken from Quimby Rodriguez's game, Your Sister's Drowned Laertes, of a white card. I am all right, but I may need time to breathe or steady myself for a minute. So with that being the case, I really just want to take this moment to say that safety really isn't necessarily always about trying to manage for like the most unpleasant things. Sometimes just opening a conversation about safety is just about realizing that these might be subjects we're uncomfortable with and we've never talked about them openly. That's okay. It really sucks in a lot of contexts to have to be, the killjoy. That can feel like a lot to hold on to. And so a lot of safety tools are a way of sort of being icebreakers. They're not meant to define the whole scope of the conversation. They're meant to give us a way to ease into those topics, to open those conversations up for us to just talk more openly and treat it not as a taboo thing, but more as areas that, even if they're painful for us, we want to explore. Okay, with all that out of the way, I'm going to move into the first part of the game, which is character creation. So when folks play Flame in the Abyss, you'll be interpreting the memories of a main character through one of three perspectives. But before we can even get into that, we need to answer a more basic question. Who is this main character we're playing? And so you want to consider the following as ways to decide whose memories you'll be reflecting on. And these can be questions like, what did they do for work before they arrived in the Abyss? How old are they? How do they feel about their gender? What name do they use around others? And is it different than ones that they might use in private? Only be as detailed as you need to be to establish a character that the group feels comfortable playing, and then we can carry on to the rest of the game. So this is sort of where now we start the collaboration process of who do we want to play? Who is this person who has found themselves in the abyss on this occasion?
Okay, so when I saw the thing about the name, and then with the themes that we decided to go with being about relationships to mothers, I thought, what if we did Persephone?
My favorite goddess.
Right.
Yeah.
Because her relationship with Demeter is so complicated.
Yeah.
And I think that, and we can go with either Persephone or calling her Corey, because as it says, what name do they call themselves and what name do other people call them? So anyway, that was my thought.
I'm kind of down. I like that. I like that could be a tension point. And again, this is also like in terms of where this takes place. I have not specified a time period either. So this could be modern day. They could be someone who's working in a much more ancient context. It could be someone who's far off in the future. The point is just they've come to this place all of a sudden. So that is a very beautiful way of looking at it. It could be just a Persephone of the modern day.
Yeah.
Who's like,
go ahead.
I was going to say who's looking for more people to call her or them, maybe Corey.
Right. And I think like the concepts of like a relationship with someone else being the reason that like fractures your relationship with your parents is very relatable to a lot of people. And I think like if we're making her modern day, like she could be a plant shop owner and her partner could be queer, or Persephone could be Corey and uses they them now, and mom isn't on board for that. So like there's lots of different ways that we could go about this.
Oof, I'm so on board with this so much. Just on board.
I agree.
The gayer I can make things, like the more queer I can make things, the more queer
Good.
I will make things. So this is Femme in the Abyss after all, and so
good bless.
All right, I love this idea.
So plant shop owner, queer, probably if not gender queer, non-binary, then at least gender fluid, or is like
I'm thinking she they. Could we do like a she they kind of situation?
I like that.
Yeah, it could also be one of those where you're like, what? My favorite description I've given to a partner is when people ask me, it's like, what's your gender? I'm like, if I have to give them if it's a cis person, I have to be absolute and like not complex about it. I'll just say I'm just a trans woman. Just that's it. Just leave it at that. But then if someone asks me and wants a more complicated, I'm like, so here's what I'm not. And then they'll be like, okay, but what are you? Okay, so here's the 15 things that don't feel right to me. It's like, okay, but what are you? I just told you, here are the 80 things that don't relate to me and the 7 things that do. And it's like, that's not an answer. It's like, it is an answer. I just can't give you a satisfying answer.
Right. And like, why should you have to, honestly?
It is very much like,
I've
that
given
is
you
all
a name to use and the pronouns to use when you refer to me. That's all you need to know.
That's all you need. I am curious though, like, How old is this person? Because that changes a lot of things too. Are they like a very, very young person who's involved in this? Just like it's a part-time job? Are they someone older where they own the establishment?
I
How
think
old are they?
I think like it's a small shop in there, and they're like 27ish, and it is their shop. And it's not like it's super like lucrative. And I mean, Persephone's is with Hades, who is like, money. So maybe she's in a queer relationship, and the partner is the breadwinner, so that she can have like this little um, shop that they own, and can afford to do all of that, and is living their dream, but has this like fraught relationship with their family because of it. And like maybe they went to college for something, like parents were like, "Hey, you should be a doctor or a lawyer or something that like will make lots of money." And so they have a degree, and they're like, "But I really just feel at home with these plants." And my partner is big business person over there, and so like I'm just gonna do my plant shop, and you can chill.
I like that. So does that kind of also fall into where does this person live and how did that affect their outlook on life? That question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These are again, we don't have to answer all of these at once because we this character is as fully fleshed out from the get-go as we want them to be. She 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 literally we could just have a name and it's like she uses she or pronouns. Gender will decide that later and a bunch of other stuff for work. This is to help us decide like how to build off our reflections and give us other material to work off of. So if we don't necessarily know where she works, that's fine. It's just a matter of giving us a level of who are we working with as a person. But if you do want to answer the question of like where does she work and what did they do before they arrived here? Well, it seems like they owned a plant shop, but where is it? Where would this plant shop be? Do you have a sense of where you'd want it to be, Christiana?
Um, I was just because of my own experiences, I'm seeing it in a more like busy city. There's a lot of people and a lot of like-minded people maybe around her, so that they feel more comfortable being who they are, um, and really leaning into this idea of like, what is gender? Does it even matter? Which can probably reinforce even some of the negative feelings that she's having with her mother, who doesn't accept them as they should be.
It's like, yay, I went to the big city. This is so great. Why did my previous times kind of suck? Oh, oh, oh,
Yeah.
I'm, oh,
I'm from
I'm
the
having a time
suburb.
here.
Okay. I feel good about that.
Okay. Do we feel like we have a character that we can work with?
Yes.
Alrighty. So let's go from there to our role summary. Now, whenever you play this game, the next thing to decide is which of these roles folks would like to play. So for this game, a lot of what different turns and such are going to be a lot of how we're going to reflect is based off of, as I said before, which role you take on. And so each of these three roles is a very different way of looking at the memories. And so we have one the frayed, one the mist, and one the flame. So each of these three roles has some complications, as we shall say, in terms of how they're thinking about the memories. And that's kind of the point, is that this character is having a lot of conflicting feelings about whatever their loss is going to be. So we've started talking about this before we went live, but do folks have any particular role they're being drawn towards with this? We have the frayed, the mist, and the flame is our three roles.
I am gonna be fine with whatever. I know which one is the most like me a lot of the time. Um, So like I'm trying to go away from that, I think, because I often end up like dealing with things as the mist, where like I'm very mom friend and taking care of others as a way to like deal with the fact that the world is burning. And that's like, why I'm a teacher and all that stuff. And so like if I would prefer not to play that role, because that's who I am every day, basically.
I have the same reasoning as I usually am a lot like the frayed in my own life. I can focus a lot on the bad things as a way to make sure that they don't happen again in the same way. So maybe I would like to stray away from that. So I could play either the mist or the flame is fine with me, but probably not the frayed.
Okay. So would it be acceptable to say, Nikki, you want to take on the frayed, and then Christiana, you want to take on the mist, and I
Sure.
can take on the flame, just to sort of bring everything together? Or
Yes, and
what
what
is
I
it?
love about that is how I said I just threw up the names onto the overlay and I was going to move them once we figured out our roles. That's actually the order that they ended up on the sheet on the overlay. And so I don't even have to move them, and that's really
Amazing.
nice. That
Excellent.
feels kismet to me, and I think we should keep
That's
Mhm.
it.
perfection. So we've been saying each of these three roles, but I'm going to give this little bit of space for each of us to go through and read the rough breakdown of what each of these three roles entails.
Okay, can you do one of the other
So,
ones first? Because I need to fix. I spelled mist wrong.
yes, yes. So I'll let the mist on role summary, which should be page 8 of the doc,
Got
is
it.
so feel free to read through your section up until and through final round question.
Okay. The Mist, a manifestation of the main character's optimism, joy, and willingness to care about others. Think of his role as rooted in idealism, looking back on events with rose tinted glasses with a penchant for self sacrifice. When playing this role, remember to look back on memories with a focus on how they involved other people bringing happiness to the main character. Aim for the more positive elements of memories and move attention away from aspects that involve sacrifice on the part of the main character. Remember, you represent the main character's hopefulness left unchecked by reality and self preservation. The Mist will always follow the Frayed in establishing what about the current round's theme resonated with the main character. Build off whatever stood out to you from what the Frayed has said and add on details as you see fit.
Very nice. So the flame, a manifestation of the main character's desire to persevere in spite of adversity. Think of this role as a synthesis of all the main character's emotions, considering all their perspectives, but ultimately deciding what they need most to carry on. If the frayed represents grief left unresolved, and the mist represents self denial, the flame represents the mediator between these two emotional poles. While the main character may never fully get over the strain brought on by the loss, you are never required to leave the main character in a state of misery. You symbolize what carried on in spite of everything, looking back on events with an eye for what the main character needed to heal. So then that leaves us with the frayed.
The Frayed, a manifestation of the main character's frustration, anger, and pragmatism. Think of the role as rooted in pessimism, looking back on events with a sense of longing for what could have been otherwise. When playing this role, remember to look back on memories with a focus on how they directly affected the main character for the worse. While this can involve anger, sadness, or any other negative emotions, your motivation should always be more self oriented. This does not mean dwelling on the trauma of what the main character remembers, but instead recognizing what was draining about the experience. The Frayed will always begin each round by establishing what about the current round's theme resonated with the main character first.
With that being said, the way that this sort of works is we can move the gameplay now, and the order will always be the frayed starts around, then the mist will follow, and then the flame will follow from there. That will always be the order that we go. And the course of play for the entire session will be in 4 parts. So playing the game is always done 4 rounds, starting with the spark, continuing on with the kindling and the embers, and ending with scattering the ashes. So for the spark, Whichever player has chosen to take on the role of the flame will start the game by determining what will be the loss the main character has recently experienced. To do this, the flame rolls a d4, and the result will determine which of the following topics will act as the loss the table reflects on for this session. The 4 topics are death of a loved one, divorce/end of a relationship, losing faith in a religion, or cutting out family members/close friends from your life. So I'll do that right now. For our young Corey/Persephone, the loss is divorce/end of a relationship. Oof, that is going to be fun for our gender struggling young Persephone. So after determining what the loss is, the flame will then determine what would be the first theme the table will address in round 1. The flame will then roll d6, and the result will determine what will be the focus for reflection. So among 3 themes of memento, location, and food, rolling a d6, we have number 2, which is what is an item of significance that brings the loss to mind? So now that we have our theme for this round, the Frayed will be able to establish what about the theme that the main character remembers first, then the mist, then the flame. So for the 2 of you who are taking over the first 2 parts of the round, Frayed, you can establish whatever details just comes to mind for Persephone in remembering, trying to answer that kind of question. And then once you have all your details, the mist can take over, and you don't have to agree to the same details. You could remember the event entirely differently, but you are going to use what Nikki, our Frayed, has established as sort of like a jumping off point. And then once you 2 do a little bit of back and forth, I can jump in at that point and then interpret what comes from there. The idea is to collaborate and build off of sort of what each person has been saying and see what we end up with at the end of that. So,
Okay.
with that being the case, are afraid, what is an item of significance that brings the loss of an end of a relationship or a divorce to our young Corey's mind?
I see them standing in the condo that they shared with their partner, and they're holding on to, like they're like a charm at the end of a necklace, and just looking at the empty space that used to be filled with all of the things that they shared. And I kind of like pictured it as like a high-rise condo in the city that they lived in, and have her little shop like maybe is like a couple blocks away. Especially like thinking of like, I can picture it as kind of like how Seattle is set up, where it's like you have these like skyrise places, and then you have like these tiny little flower shops in like Wallingford and stuff. So like, yeah, so I see her like standing there just looking at everything that isn't there anymore.
So is the space more empty now than it used to be?
Yeah, I think that like, we were talking about how like maybe the partner is the one with all of the money, and that's how they were able to afford to just have like the little shop and all that stuff. And so I kind of, maybe the partner had like a collection of, nice things that were theirs before they like started living together, and took that with them when they left.
I think she could also be, obviously, yes, there's some empty space now, but there are a lot of plants that require different sources of light, different levels of light, and this actually gives her the freedom to make those changes in her living space now, make sure that she can actually focus more time into raising more plants, then it can increase her inventory at the shop, things like that. If she can, now put a shelf and have some baby sprouts with some UV lights, there's space for this now. And it's not so much empty as it is potential.
Right. And I think like maybe it was very like minimalistic, like like minimalism is very like ooh upper crusty, and I'm so rich and now I can just make everything minimalist, and like the rest of us like cottagecore queers are like no, like I want all my cute kitschy shit. And so like right now it's very much an empty space that was this partner's like more their style because it was their condo first.
Yeah. Well, even the memento that they have, this locket or this charm, um, it's good to remember things sometimes as they were, and um, even though the relationship is over, the opportunities that have arisen because of that, and the things that Corey has learned about themselves, um, and about business, and uh, about coming into their own as an adult in a big city. It, it's it's worth it. It can be worth it, even in the face of loss. There is hope, and there's a chance for growth, just like the plants that surround her.
Did our afraid want to add anything else in response, or does that feel like a good spot?
I feel like that's a good spot.
I think I like the element of the necklace. That is just like a constant reminder of it that they sort of carry around their neck. I think that's a really beautiful way of like holding on and also showing like still haven't let go. I'm gonna go uh more specific, I think, though, and I'll say that it's this it's it has two little aspects to it, the necklace. One is a segment of it has a mixture of two little bottles of sand, one representing each of them, Corey and their partner, that when mixed together were poured, that mixture was poured into this little segment. And then also the bottom half of it has a set of amber that's just very beautiful. And wherever they go, it shines very brightly. So it always looks like it's like a little light or a little bit of life carrying on. And I think there is that feeling of growth, there is that feeling of potential, but it's I think not as bright and happy a feeling about it. I don't think it feels like it's empty. I think it's just more the terrifying sense of like, I'm no longer a person who's in this relationship anymore. I get to be me again. What the hell does that mean? I don't know who that person is now that I'm becoming more of who I want to be. I think it's the joy of finding that potential and that space to spread out, but it's also the horror of realizing what that weight is. It's that sense of like, I get to be me more. Who is that? That person is not somebody I recognize anymore. And I think I don't think necessarily it was an apartment. I think it was a greenhouse that it had that stored a lot of them. And there was a whole section in the back that was just a private little garden for the two of them. That now they've sort of transferred a lot of the plants into different pots and moved their section away. So it's like there's more earth to be tilled there, there's more to plant. What is that going to be now? It's the the beauty of new life to spring up, but what is it going to be? Okay, I'm good. I'm good. Not good. Not good at all. Do we feel like that's a good spot for thinking about memento?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the spark. So now we move into the kindling. Rounds 2 and 3 of Flame in the Abyss work in much the same way they did in the spark. However, there are slight differences in determining what themes will be the focus for each round. When the flame rolls for round 2's theme, they roll a d6, but odds will be the first remaining theme and evens will be the second. And then we'll repeat the order of the frayed starts, then the mist, and then the flame. And then when round 3 begins, we work with whatever theme is left. And if we can't decide, we can either roll with a d6 to help us decide, or we just ultimately let the flame have final say in it. But now we roll, determine which between location and food will be the next one to answer. So that is an even number. So that means we'll be engaging with food. So, Frayed, what special memories of food do they associate with this loss of this partner?
So I think like as a business owner and as a person who like the partner was a person who like had a job like a high powered job but they had to like get up early as well, that they're they would have coffee together in the morning. And so like the and before then, like before she was with her partner, they were more into like tea, and so and would drink like black tea instead of coffee for their caffeine. And so I wonder, I feel like the the smell of coffee still lingers, even though once her partner left, they stopped drinking coffee and went back to drinking tea. Um, and yet, like, there's that lingering smell. Um, and even though the coffee maker is not in her home anymore, and the but like the mug is still there, like the same mug that she would always use every morning because it's the perfect size. And so, um, yeah, and then like just smelling coffee being brewed is painful.
It could be painful, but it could also be an asset personally. There's so many coffee beans left over from the different kinds that they used to buy and surprise their partner with and say, oh, like, let's try this new way of making coffee and this new flavor creamer or anything like that. But with all this leftover beans now, uh, maybe they can offer coffee in their shop, free coffee for people who come in on a rainy day in the city or something. Um, uh, Ground coffee beans can be mixed into fertilizer for certain kinds of plants to help promote growth, even in cold winter months when the sun isn't out as much. Um, so, yeah, I think she thinks that there's a way to utilize these things and at least finish the coffee that was bought, that's still laying around the house somewhere that wasn't taken. And she doesn't have to buy it again if she doesn't want to in the future, but she won't waste it.
I think every time, I think that they do start offering coffee to guests, um, and they do start using it in the fertilizer, but it's still like that smell. And then, like, maybe one day somebody comes in the shop who also smells like um, her partner did. And so, like, every time she has the combination of the the scent of somebody's shampoo, especially on a rainy day when their hair gets wet again, and this person walks in with that uses the same shampoo as their partner, and the smell of a mixture of coffee and that shampoo sends her, like, she's, a little bit kind of starts to, her mind wanders, and so someone's asking about a plant and their brain is not focused on that.
So those kinds of days do happen, and they're difficult. But now they can call their mom and talk to them about these things, because their mom went through a really hard time with their partner as well, or ex-partner. And although there's been a discord between them because the way that Corey chooses to live their life, it doesn't live up to the expectations of what their mom wanted for them, she's open to now reevaluating things, and they really need the support right now. So bad days mean maybe a good uplifting convo with mom.
I don't think I have anything to add to that.
I think there it's not just because it was coffee that their partner had that's so impactful about it. I think it's because I imagine the way that they met their partner, it might have just been we're going to go with the true gay cliche of coffee shop gay here, and the coffee order specifically was how they stumbled and ran into their partner, who, in that very particular way that I think queers know how to see each other, Corey was just like, "Oh no, I'm not really into like other folks like that. I don't know." And that person was like, "No, you definitely are. I know this because you're into me. I can tell already." Just like unabashedly, just super forward and into them, into Corey, and just seeing her as she like was nervous about being in that way that I think partners or friends can see you when they're like, "You're an egg." Like if you're trans or you're like gender nonconforming, you're like, "What do you?" No, no, no. I'm super cis, super straight, definitely all those things. And it's like, nah, I don't think so. I don't think that's actually what you are. And not in a condescending way. I think it was just that way of like someone just reading you so piercingly and so deeply that I think like that coffee, it's not just because it was just like, oh, their partner had it. It was the coffee order that they had like the first time they met. So smelling it again is so painful because that was how this started. And I think that was the same order or the same kind of coffee that was had when the relationship ended. It was that. But I also think it was something that was part of like a running theme with different difficult relationships. I think their mom had this similar kind of coffee order whenever you'd sit down. So it'd be like, "Thanks, mom. You're making this even more awkward than this could possibly be." I knew this was a bad idea to talk to you, and that was like the first 3 times talking. And then the 4th time, it wasn't as painful. And then the 5th time, it wasn't as painful. And then the 6th time, it was really fucking painful. And then after a while, it was like, I don't like you, mom, but I also don't hate you. And I really, really need to talk to you sometimes. And it's nice to have you there. I think the coffee is like it's a constant. It's not just because it was their brand. It was the first one. It was the beginning and it was the end. If everyone is good with that.
Yep.
That's round 2. So now we move into round 3, dealing with the final theme, which it's interesting to have gone in this order because the final theme for us is location. Where did the loss happen? And what are some areas of importance related to it? So, Frade, how do you remember where this happened?
I think when she sits down and thinks about like where did it start? Like where did it all go wrong? And like where did things start to fall apart? And it's the arguments about time, and it's the stress of running a business and the stress of being a person in a job that requires a lot from you. So from the with the partner, and so when Corey sits down to think about like where were those arguments, and they always seem to happen in their like in the kitchen, because it's like they would make dinner and then their partner would get home super late, and it's like I run a business, I totally understand like that you're stressed and that you have to work a lot, but like you could be home for dinner. And so then they would get into these arguments, and so that's where like she associates the loss happening is just those arguments in over dinner, or the lack of dinner, because by the time the partner got home, it was cold. Um, but then it's also in the shop, um, because it's lonely to work in a shop by yourself, but she can't afford to hire anybody, and she's not going to ask her partner for help with money because they already do so much for them. And so it's all of these things, all of these places that matter a lot to Corey, that the end happened.
Their partner does so much for them. I could have, she could have had dinner later or brought dinner to their partner. But sometimes sacrifices need to happen to keep a relationship afloat, even if only temporary. And maybe what they remember is having those arguments and then feeling bad for having the argument in the first place. Feeling bad for just having those feelings of wanting more. Did they want too much? Did they ask for too much? And now she tries to cook and understands a little bit better now where their partner was coming from, and those arguments about, I know I'm not home on time, and I had to do this. There's no way I could avoid it. And now not having that partnership and running her own business realizes, yeah, okay. I get it. Sometimes there are unavoidable things, um, and my next relationship, because I want a next relationship, that won't be something that I struggle with. And I had to learn that. I learned it the hard way, but I learned it.
But it's also unfair because, like, it's not fair to sacrifice her own needs because someone else pays her bills. And and um and now they realize like they would rather be less comfortable financially if it meant having more support because there's no excuse for somebody not being there for them.
I don't know if I have anything else to add.
The mist is a tricky one to play sometimes. I think the kitchen. I like the idea that it was a kitchen. That it was just this place where so much happiness was happening, and maybe there was like before the shop took off or before work got really intense, that the kitchen was like a lot of the and like reflecting back on the memories. It's like a montage scene of like really cute moving into this spot, but like it's yay, we have this new upstanding apartment. What do you have for cutlery and like plates, paper plates, and stuff like that? It's a lot of that kind of vibe initially, and then it's like, yay, here's a birthday, here's something that happened, and then there's images of the nights just kind of being alone. Maybe a birthday is missed, or maybe an anniversary is missed on both their ends, and I think there is a lot of pain around that sense of like, you did this much and I understand this person is busy, they need to do a lot for us to survive, but they sometimes you need to make the time. It's not easy, but sometimes you need to make the time. Just if you've made clear from your partner like, this is important, I know we can't do it all the time, but maybe just once for an anniversary or something special, we plan it. And I like the idea that I think part of what makes the kitchen so special is that there's maybe this moment of new love blooming with someone else. That the kitchen is a spot of like just like a friend who's been there, who's seen Corey as Corey, no longer the previous name. Persephone's still a name that she uses sometimes, but Corey is more what they use with the people who are close to them. And there's this like very tender moment of like, I'm gonna lean into this area. It's just like very tender, like hand holding or hand touching. That it's like, oh no, for a second I forgot my ex, someone who I loved so much. I don't know how to feel about that because I almost forgot about someone who I loved so much and who was there for me for so much. And now they're not, but someone else could be. Not because I need someone to be there for me to be okay. I have me and that's enough. But there's room for new love. And as with the space for new plants and new things to grow, potential is beautiful and amazing. And it's terrifying. It's really scary to think about what new is going to be like when you're so used to one way of being. I think that is a good spot to end round 3, which marks the end of the kindling. And before we move into the next section, which is called the embers, which will be the last round, we're going to take a short break for our own well-being and just to give ourselves just a little bit of time to process. So we'll be back in a few minutes, everybody. But thank you so much for those of you who have been tuning in to this showcase of Flame in the Abyss so far. We'll see you back in just a little bit.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. The dinosaur story. Anyways, it's lovely to have folks who are here tuning in to this showcase of A Flame in the Abyss. We have cheekily titled Femme in the Abyss. It is a one shot of my game, the first ever game I've written called Flame in the Abyss. And we've been playing through various rounds of a young Corey slash Persephone processing the end of a relationship in a flower shop, having lost that relationship, and possibly a new love blooming, and the terror of that new space and a new connection with mom that bringing up a lot of feelings for some of us, which is to say, a lot of feelings, all of the feelings for us. But as we have moved through the game stages of first the spark and then the kindling, we now move into the third stage, which is called the embers. So, for the final round of play, each role will have the opportunity to reflect on the final theme as it relates to the loss experienced by the main character. However, you should focus on how the theme contributes to the character's escape from the abyss. So, this theme is for all of us to engage with. These are just questions to prompt some thought. How does the main character memorialize the loss? Do they have any rituals or hobbies related to it? And each of the roles has a distinct sort of question that they should try and answer in relation to how they escape. So for the frayed, it will be, how does the theme relate to your strain? And how do you answer the question, what did this character, what did Corey need relief from? For the mist, aim to focus on what you tried to find escape from, and what did the main character, what did Persephone need escape from? And then ultimately, I, as the flame, will take in all that what you said and answer the final question of how do you make peace with your loss? How does Corey slash Persephone make peace with this loss? So we'll start with the frayed.
So, am I answering the memorial questions but with a focus on needing relief?
Yes,
Got
that's
it.
kind of your focus. So the memorial questions, the questions for every theme are a way to sort of jumpstart everyone thinking about like how the theme is affecting the memories, how your reflections work. But your specific question you want to try and answer and focus on is, what did they need relief from? This kind of stage is meant to be a way of giving each of the roles a way to kind of play into the opposite of what they've been doing. Because instead of really focusing on like, oh, this sucked or this was painful, it's asking the brighter end of that question is, what were you looking for relief from?
And so I think that with everything that has happened, that their morning ritual has changed. And so before it was like the pre brewed coffee, and you would come out and it would already be in the pot ready to go. And now there's a whole like routine around um, boiling the water in the kettle and making the tea and all that stuff. And the relief, what they're being relieved from is that like rush in the morning, the like hustle and bustle of getting both people out of the door with like breakfast and packed up a lunch and the coffee to go and all of these things. And now it's just like kind of a calm, like slow morning ritual. And so the relief that they're getting, like the relief that they're trying to what they're trying to be relieved from is that um, the the need for support from this person that they no longer have in their life, and trying to parse out what was like um, emotional support and what was financial support, and realizing that sometimes one was mistaken for the other.
I think probably later on that same day, before opening the shop, Corey goes to the greenhouse and again notices that most of the plants that them and their partner had planted separately and were just kind of raising. Most of their partners is gone, but there is one that they planted kind of together. I mean, Corey has more experience with it, but there might be a little tree or a little sapling that is starting to sprout. And they remember that they had a specific place in the shop that they were going to plant it, and it was going to grow into this tree and have, I don't know, maybe some really beautiful smelling flowers, and it was just going to be kind of a focal point of their love and their relationship. And I think her first instinct is to just sell it, put it in a pot and just put it on a shelf. But instead, they go through an actual ritual of unearthing the plant, separating the roots, and seeing that the roots have actually converged more into a root system. And this plant is very healthy and can be separated into multiple cuttings and can be made into multiple plants. And they take the time, probably about an hour or so, to do that, making sure that each cutting has a viable root system, and it's repotted, it's fertilized, it's watered, and is put for sale for other people to experience the type of joy that this plant and watching it grow can bring. Because what she really needed relief from or escape from is the mist's question, is that feeling of reliance on anyone and everyone but themselves. Even in this whole situation, and calling their mom and relying on their mom for support now that their partner is gone, it's not the actual healthy thing to do, she believes. It's better to know yourself and to be a whole person on your own rather than rely on someone else for that. So I think that's what she's trying to escape from, that box of this is who I am. I am this person's partner. They are my partner. And then instead be like, no, I am Corey. I'm a whole person.
It sounds like from what both the Frayed and the Mist reflecting on it, on Corey's life so far, it's been a case of like struggling with dependency, of even codependency, of feeling like I need this person to be there. I need this person to like let me know I'm going to be okay, because I don't know who I am. I don't know who I'm going to be. I don't know any of this, or I don't know how I'm going to manage this business. I don't know how I'm going to manage these plants. It's so much that I feel like I can't do. And then you start doing things that you need to survive. And then you do the things that you need to grow. And you've discovered you're actually a lot stronger than you realized. Corey is a lot stronger than they realized. And I think because we started this very gay, I'm going to give it a nice little happy gay note at the end as well. And I think there is a moment of a new person, or maybe even persons who come into their life who they've been like very cagey or on the fence about. There's been the sense of like, no, it's just going to end up as like they go back and forth between a couple of different moods. Some days they're like, no, this is just going to end up as bad as the last one. I should just be ready for it to be like be on my own and not that. And there's other days where it's like, no, 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 we're going to be so sweet. It's going to be so perfect and romantic and all these things. And then it's like, no, 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 no. Just be honest. Just be you. Just take a chance and see what that's going to be. And I think the making peace with the loss is actually bringing whoever they're interested in to this spot in the back of the greenhouse, being like, I would like to plant something here with you. Whatever you want me to plant, I want to do this with you. I want to build and grow something new. I think it's a way of marking something that felt like the end of everything that she thought she was supposed to be, and giving room for everything that they could be, good or bad, positive, negative, frantically organized and fast paced and really stressing about things, or very slow, methodical, drinking in the sense of time and space. Whatever it's going to be, I want to make the space with you. I think whoever this person is or these new people are, that there's this warmth that happens with it. There's something new there. There's the start of something. But what it'll be, I don't think Corey knows just yet. And that's okay. That's okay. If that feels like a good spot to close off that last round, we move into the final section of the game, which is called Scattering the Ashes. With all that may have come up throughout the course of play, all of us, whether we be viewers or players, may be feeling a lot of heavy emotions. And if you're anything like me, it can be hard to let go of those emotions right away. This section is devoted to giving you space to check in with yourself, get back to your body, and let go of the weight you may be carrying. The text is taken from Dark Jaguar's A Little Indulgence to Cheer You Up, Self-Compassion, which I would highly recommend any viewers and even our fellow players to read in full. We start with check-in and end with closing ceremony. So I will let Christiana take over to read the check-in section. So it's page 13 of the text.
Do a quick check-in with yourself. How are you at this moment? Are you comfortable? And how is your energy level?
Just take a few seconds, ask those questions of yourself, figure out if you need to move your chair around, do stretch, posture check, all of that. Adjust the cat ears. It's always important. If you feel good, feel ready to keep going on, you're checking in and present with yourself, then we move into breathe. So for Nikki,
I'm reading
to read the breathe section. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Sometimes with stress and anxiety, our breathing becomes shallow and accelerated. It's a good idea to check in on how you're breathing if you're feeling a little out of it. Become aware of your breath. If it is fast and shallow, try to breathe gently and bring it back to a slower pace. Are you feeling tightness in your chest? It's okay. Breathe gently into those spaces and allow the tension to release if you can. If you're comfortable, gently place your hand on your belly or in the middle of your chest or over your heart and feel the warmth of your hand. Take a few gentle breaths.
When you feel ready, you've taken some breaths, release that tension that you might have in your body. Take some time with indulgence to be kind to yourself. Treat yourself to something that you know brings you joy. A few examples can be things like get a cup of tea or your favorite beverage, or if you just have some water and sit for a few minutes, relishing the taste, getting rehydrated, letting just the joy of that just sink into your body. Put on some music from your favorite band and sink into space for a while. Or, as I've suggested for our players before we started, grab a piece of candy or chocolate or just a favorite treat or a snack of some kind and take a moment to just savor that flavor, to just enjoy being here with us in this moment in your body, not away, not drifting with thoughts idly, pondering all that we've discussed or felt in the course of the session, but just enjoy the treat, enjoy the sweetness you give to yourself. Acknowledge your body, recognize what it needs to keep going, and sink back into yourself slowly as, for a closing ceremony, give thanks for your kindness to yourself and return to the present. Take one more deep breath. Drink some water, and when you are ready, end the game. You have now finished playing a session of Flame in the Abyss. Congratulations, you did it. Thank you for taking risks and creating the story together. And that pretty much is a full run of the game. It's a bit shorter than I've actually had some sessions go, but that's kind of the way sometimes it goes. We could have lingered longer on some things. We could have passed over more, but that's kind of what the whole of the game is. It's an exercise in just letting you, with a few other people, reflect on what a character needed to move on from something. And in a lot of ways, you don't let go of everything, but it's a step. It's part of what lets you start moving, lets you keep going on. So that is the whole official of the game and the rigmarole. First important question, how's everyone doing?
Good?
Good. That ending was very important to me.
It's initially when I wrote the book, the game, I didn't include that section. And after my first play test, my players are like, I'm feeling a lot here. Could you possibly include something at the end of this to let us just down from that? And I was like, you know what? You're right. I was like, not everyone is willing to like bulldoze their way through their own emotions and just sit for the rest of the day in them. Not everybody wants to do that. And that's okay. We shouldn't expect everyone to have to do that.
I also think it's really good, like, as a neurodivergent person, I'm sure you can relate, that, like, sometimes we don't know our own feelings, so it's good to, like, check in with yourself and make sure you're okay, because I know for a lot of neurodivergent people, there's a disconnect between our physical bodies and our emotions, and so it's good to, like, have that check-in, to bring it into focus of like, how am I feeling? So yeah, but I think the game is amazing, and I think it went by so quickly because you two haven't played together, but like, right? You two haven't been at a table together?
No,
I didn't think
I
so.
have not.
But like the rest of us have been at tables together and have played a lot of games together, and like I've played a lot with Angela and with Christiana separately. And so I feel like when you can connect on a lot of things, and then we met like a whole hour earlier as well to like kind of connect, and we were chatting about the different parallels and universal queer experiences and all that stuff. And so there was a lot of, I feel like if we hadn't done that, it would have been longer because we would have had to discuss more connections that we were making to each other while we were playing. And so I think that like that's part of why it went by so quickly. But
No, and it's also like if you have any questions, either of you, about the game, I'm more than happy to answer anything about it. I love doing that kind of thing for because I don't like this. I don't like my intention with the game to ever feel like it's like masked behind like 8,000 different things that I will never reveal. It's like, no, I can tell you directly about what pretty much most of the decisions for why I did things in the game were the way they are. So I'm happy to answer anything if you do have questions.
um, the part about the food that like really stuck out to me, and it's not so much like a question, but more of a connection I made. Yesterday, I helped moderate some panels for Big Bad Con. And one of the panels that I got to moderate was about, it was an all POC panel about being people of color in the TTRPG community. And one of the things that I asked was like I posted a question was, what's the best thing about being at an all POC table? And one of the things that they brought up was you talk about food way more than any other table that you're at. And so I thought it was really interesting that you had this like piece in there. And I'm white, but my family is Portuguese, and so like there is this like old country, like back in the old country we did this, and like there's a lot of like culture that is infused into that community as well. And my family are immigrants, and so like I connect with that as well, with like the food being an important piece of that. But I just thought it was really an interesting connection of like you and the food was important enough for you to put into the mechanics of the game. So can you like speak on that?
Yeah, a lot of the reason for that was that it is kind of the like, for lack of better phrasing, the like POC influence in the game from both the communities I'm involved in, but just my own personal experience that there is a lot in the reflecting on my mother being gone. And then during my senior year of undergrad, my grandmother also passed away. So I've lost two of like the closest influences in my life of what it meant to be a woman, of what it meant to be the kind of person I wanted to be in the world, just in presenting myself. And one of the things that stood out to me so much with them being gone was the loss of knowledge, of cultural knowledge in general, but specifically like food, because there was a lot of things that I remember in the aftermath of my grandmother passing away. When I left college, I had a moment of like, I looked up a recipe for, it's essentially like a cheese roll that you make in Bolivia that she would make all the time. And it's not a complicated recipe, but it was one of those things where I was like, when I made it the first time, I was like, all right, I have a sketch of what she used to do. It does not look quite like what she did, but I'm getting there. And I was so emotional and nearly crying about that because there's a sense of, I think a misconception that happens when people talk about history, when they teach it poorly or when they learn it poorly, is the sense that history is a very dead thing or it's a very static thing. And what I love about actually thinking about history more in the kind of fluid and living way is that families, cultures, communities, we have these sense almost to like the bone and flesh of memory and weight of legacy. And some of that legacy is food based, because I don't think I need to expound too much. When people fight over a family recipe, it's straight up like a civil war sometimes, because folks will like, whether it's like tias or aunties or just like folks, a lot of folks will recognize that moment in a kitchen where you see someone judging someone's cooking. It's like, you're really putting that in there, huh? No, 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 no. If that's the way you do it, that's fine. That's fine. That makes sense. That's fine. If you wanted to, but it's your house. You do what you want. You do it. But I'm just saying, if you wanted to, and like that sounds like such a like judgmental, gossipy kind of thing. But for a lot of us too, who are dealing with family members who, as we get older, they start passing away, there is the weight of that loss being like I'm gonna go out. I eat this. I go to Oblivion Place whenever the three that exist in all I've ever known in my life, I find them. I eat there and I'm like, God, this is so amazing. I it's nowhere. It's not quite the chicken soup that my grandmother made, but it's really good. Huh? My grandmother passed away when she was about 97. She passed away about 15 years ago. Christ. She passed away, this woman who made the simplest and most delicious soup I've ever had in my life. The soup that my brother literally had to deal with TSA asking him why he was carrying a thermos of soup across several countries in order to have it back at home. And the answer was, it's soup. What do you think I'm trying to steal? It's food has a lot to it. It's one of those things where the body is very involved because it's not the smell, it's the sound in the kitchens, it's the weight in your hands of, for anyone who's ever made tamales, they fucking take forever. Or if you've ever made salteñas, which are a Bolivian kind of like a turnover dish, those things take like fucking 2 days to make.
Ours
Like,
is brazoish, and it's like an empanada, but it's fish inside. Because my family's Azorian Portuguese, so they're from like a Mediterranean set of islands, and it's this pastry. It's pastry, like pastry dough, and then you put salmon, and you have to boil the salmon with flour and spices and ketchup and egg and all this stuff, and you have to make sure it doesn't separate wrong, and then you mix all that in, and then you put that in with paprika, like tons of paprika, and then you fold it over, and then you have to like do an egg wash and then breadcrumbs, and then you fry it. And so it takes so long and multiple people. And when the first time my brothers and I made it and we did it right, we got the recipe from my tia Zita, and dad translated it for us, and it was just like this very emotional moment of triumph because we finally got it right, because they wouldn't teach my brother because he's male, so there's like a lot of gender stuff with cooking and families as well, and so they wouldn't teach my brother because he's a guy. I stopped talking to my family before I was able to independently go visit so that I could learn how to do it, because like no one ever took me over there. And so when we finally got it and like we nailed it, and it was just this like weird feeling. And I still every fall like crave those rosóis so much. And it's, yeah, if you ever they make Brazilian Portuguese people make a similar thing where it's a cone shape. And so I know that like Catanda, which is local to us, they make them, and it's called what is it called? Anyway, it's like this cone, and they put like chicken, and when they do it in English, they call it like chicken cone. But anyway, so, and like it's very similar, but yeah. Sorry, I just found that very relatable. It takes a long time to make.
no,
It's very delicious, and somebody had to teach us how to make it, because if you look online for a recipe, it's all for shrimp, and my family makes it with salmon. So like, or
like,
tuna.
I do it this way.
Yeah.
I just where's the one other family who made it this one very specific way?
Right?
Because
I'm
like,
like, I have a craving for this specific way. Can I eat it with shrimp? Sure. Will it taste good? Yes, it's fried dough. Of course it tastes good. But is it the thing that I've been craving, that I need for my soul? No.
no. And that's the thing, is that that'll happen with music, that'll happen with dancing, that'll happen with food. And food is one of those where I'm like, I don't want us to discount it because of how much it involves our bodies. It's such a very sensory dependent thing. And it's also one of those where you're like someone will walk into a kitchen, let's say they smell like something like star anise, where they might only have association in one context with it. They're like, why are you crying? It's like, because my grandma was the only one it's the only time I ever smelled this. It's like, you haven't had star anise before? No, I haven't had star anise before, Charles. Don't fucking get on my case about it. And don't ask me why I'm crying. But that's kind of why I wanted the food part in there, because it has so much community aspect to it, but it's also one of those where like it's a very funny and sad thing to think about, the weight, because at the end of the day, like you said, it's like just fucking ball of just cheese and dough. It's not that important. It's like, then why am I crying? Why am I wanting to sob over this roll of cheese that and bread that I ate probably half of it myself, and I'm probably going to eat the other half of it later, and then I'll have to make it again, and it's not that important, but it is, because it's part of how it speaks to how we connect to people.
Yeah. Christiana, did you have any questions about the game? Comments?
In a way, not so much about your process of the game, but I found myself during, like, while we were going through the process, wanting to use I statements instead of talking about Corey in the third person. So it's not written into the game. So my assumption was that you don't really care whether or not, and it doesn't really matter whether or not players say, like, they take on the character themselves and say, well, I am this and this and that. So have you ever played it that way? Do you think there are benefits to playing it that way versus third person?
I think I'll give you both the general answer and the specific answer to that. The general answer is, I know for people who sometimes do third person, it's a matter of giving themselves distance.
Mhm.
It's a matter of, like, it lets them imagine otherwise more easily, and it doesn't also create the expectation internally that you have to be a certain way, because I know for a lot of people, some of the initial hiccups when they're getting involved to a TTRPG for the first time is trying to answer the question of, like, okay, this person's different than me, so how do I embody that person? And they'll often start with, okay, how are they similar to me, when actually it's sometimes better to actually engage with how are they different, because a lot of what it means to embody a character who's similar to us is you might fall back into patterns or habits of just who you are as a person and not really flesh out, like, what makes them distinct. Whereas if you think about what's different about how they might react to a situation, it becomes a little bit more, it becomes easier to maybe potentially do that. Like, for example, when I've thought about one of the characters I'm playing in another ongoing stream right now, she is much more direct, much more aggressive, and much more of a shutdown character who kind of always thinks of herself as in control in the situation. And that is not how I see myself. My partners disagree with me vehemently and make fun of me for that, but that is not how I see myself. But knowing that difference lets me pick out what's easier about embodying her, because it's like, that's the aspect that I need to heighten versus the other parts of myself that are like, that feels a little harsh to say directly, or that feels like that's maybe a little too sexual and a little too forward in this moment. And it's like, no, that's the thought you have to go to, because that's her. That's her in that moment. So I know for a lot of folks in general, for me, I didn't specify because I kind of figured from the experience I had, people do that anyways, whether they'll do I or third person. But I also kind of wanted it to, writing wise, to feel like it was a distinct character that people were taking on, because of the weight of what it might bring up for them. Because I've had a lot of folks in similar circles talk about the tendency, especially in actual plays, but in playing TTRPGs in general, to kind of treat games as therapy, or to treat them as like trauma processing, which is not, I don't think is inherently a bad thing, but it sometimes misses the danger and responsibility we have to one another in doing that. Because games, though they are fake, can hit on very real elements for us. And I never want to downplay that. And because of that, I think it is helpful for a lot of us. Like, God knows how many queers have been like, oh yeah, I'm going to be this random, like, let's say tiefling who's nothing like me as a person. They're like super gay and all this. They have very ambiguous gender. And then they finish it. They're like, oh no, I have, I have a lot of feelings about this. Why do I relate to this person? Oh no. So
Literally the
I never
story of
want to.
how I found out that well, not found out, but realized that maybe I'm not straight.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, this character who's like super into women, and it's like, I'm not I'm not gay at all in
This
any
person got
capacity.
in
And you're
love with
like,
her best friend.
Yeah.
and you're like, all the gays shouting at you, sure, honey, sure.
It was that.
but also the danger of doing that kind of trauma processing is that, especially at a table setting, other people are involved. That's obvious, but if you haven't talked about it, if you haven't been clear about what people are comfortable about, then it becomes a kind of public grieving process that not everyone has signed on to. And so I didn't want my game to be treated as like a substitute for actual therapy or a substitute for doing the actual intentional work you have to do to process your own shit. Because I think a lot of folks uh, don't want to stereotype or relate too heavily on it, but I do feel like a lot of femme folks, especially whether cis or some variation of genderqueer, non-conforming, or what have you, have experience with ending up being the emotional like support person and having to listen to folks like troubles. And so, especially because of that, I wanted it to be written in a way where that you didn't feel like as a player you had to take it on as an aspect of you. You could if you felt safe doing that, but I was very particular in trying to write this and knowing that this is a game about trauma and grief. This is one person's way of how she has viewed trying to come to terms with grief and trying to get at the messiness of it. And for some people, grief is very direct and simple. They're like, that person is dead. There is nothing else there. Or that person's out of my life. Fuck them. That's some people. And that's a legitimate way to process and deal with it. I don't inherently think it's them denying reality. Some of it is just like, nope, you fucked with me, you fucked with my friends, or you screwed me over. Yeah, no, out, gone. Some people, when it comes to things like faith and such, it'll be like, are you still there, God? I don't know. Some days, like that might be some people's reactions. They're like, no, I left the church ages ago. I don't think about it anymore. 5 years down the line. Okay, God, I don't know if you're still there. I don't even know if I believe in you. Can you talk? People are complicated, and people, if nothing else, are a mess at times with understanding what the hell they actually want to feel or what their feelings are. And I just kind of wanted to give space for that. Just the sense that like you could keep this as a very close thing that like I want to try and do this, or I need some space from it, but I still want to engage with it. So here's some distance. That getting to see someone who's not me, who distinctly feels like I can say is not me, but is going through similar shit, lets me have the perspective that feels safe.
Thank you for that.
Whew. Well, is there anything else you didn't get to say about your game that you'd like to share before we do plugs and wrap up?
No, I think that covers a lot of it. I would just like to say also that this game did not come out of a vacuum. It came very much from the work of other queer writers and other folks who are dealing with material that can be heavy and difficult, or sometimes silly and ridiculous. The main ones I want to shout out are Alex Roberts' For the Queen game. It will probably be the biggest influence on any game I do from here on out, because For the Queen is such an accessible game in a lot of ways, but it's also a game that can get anywhere from like lewd and ridiculous and silly to like very like intense political drama. Like, oh, we're a mess of people involved in some very nasty stuff. So shout out that. Halo and Horns by Connie Chang was actually a big influence and wanting to think about narrative agency, along with Downfall and a lot of those kinds of games. Downfall especially has a 3-person approach to the game where you are rotating playing the same character. You have what I think my partner delightfully called character non-monogamy, which is essentially like a lot of us who are used to playing games where you get a playbook or something, like we have our character, it's just our thing. Downfall does not do that. You shift control of that same character and different other roles. And I loved that element of it. And I wanted to incorporate that because I like playing with narrative agency when it moves more in the direction towards the players have control. And so I wanted this to be a case where also making the flame wait means like you can't do anything unless you actually listen to your other two players. So this is my way of sneakily going, listen to other people at your table, God damn it. But also This Party Sucks by Moss Bosch and Your Sisters Drowned Laertes were also the two biggest influences. I literally in my book, I keep saying book because that's just me wanting to be a writer of a full-on book series leaking through there. I designated in this game it being called Haunted by Ophelia in honor of Quinn B. Rodriguez's influence on the game, because I think their game, Your Sisters Drowned Laertes, is absolutely amazing and is part of a whole series of, I think, what Quinn calls fever dreams in relation to their games that more people should look at because their layouts are amazing. The design on them is great. And also the material is the definition of, hi, I'm going to be gut checked in my feelings and then feel a kind of catharsis I didn't think was possible. They're amazing. And Moss's This Party Sucks is literally about playing a 20-something trans person coming off of a breakup and going to a party. And the whole element of no matter what happens, this person will escape the abyss, that's taken from their game. Their game was no matter what happens, they leave the party in a better state than when they started. That kind of hopefulness I wanted the game to end with, because it sucks to just hash out all of our trauma publicly for people. It gets one, boring, and two, like we shouldn't have to do that. That shouldn't be the ending we have to settle for, especially as like queer folks, especially as queer disabled folks or queer disabled POC. We shouldn't have to settle for you'll be sad at the end of this. Like, look at all this misery. Now care about us. It's like, no, I care about you because you matter. And also you deserve a happy ending too. But that's a lot of the main thing. This game came out of a lot of other things. Oh, and also Final Fantasy 14. I play a lot of Final Fantasy 14. The roles are literally named after a job quest storyline in that game. I was literally like watching a video of someone play this and I was like, there's a game here. There's something here. I mean, obviously there's a game being played here, but like there's another game within a game here that I need to pay attention to. I must write this. And then one hyperfixation later, I have a game. So yeah. I think that is everything.
Well, besides this, what else are you up to, Angela?
I am in over on the Dicey Amazons, a series called Queen's Gambit, where we are playing, I believe it's The Between, where I am playing Cordelia Blackrose, who I describe as Victorian Gothic dom sex worker with a penchant for flagellation and religious worship. And cheekily, I'll refer to her as Dommy Mommy, but that's probably doesn't do service to her character. But it does raise eyebrows enough for people to pay attention. So therefore, that's what I use. And I'll be over on Marefeather's channel in a bit and a few other places. I think on this channel for something else coming up very soon that I'm super excited to be a part of and screaming with excitement. But you can also find my work over at Femme on Patreon, where I've been a little slowed with my poetry, but I'm going to be starting up both public and patron exclusive pieces over there, probably posting on Thursdays. And also podcast over on Anchor of Queerly Yours with my partner. We've been stalled for a while because my partner has been having work and they're the main editor, but we'll probably see about trying to do another episode soon. And that's a lot of where you can find me. Oh, and my other work on Itch at Voice of the Phoenix, because Lord knows I should probably stop and take a break, but I'm probably not going to because games. So that's me.
Awesome. Chris?
Hi again. I'm Chris, or Christiana. I stream a lot on this channel lately, and I'm very happy for that. I love this community so much. I will be in an all AAPI cast for what is it called, Nikki? Monster Care Squad. Wow, I
Yes.
blanked for a second. Um, and that's on May 23rd. Um, Also, Avatar Reclamations is a fun game with an amazing cast. And all of the first episode is, I think, on YouTube, right? And also on Twitch. And season 2 is coming up this summer. Very excited for that. Um, Me and my friend RJ and a couple other new friends are have started a horror RPG podcast based on a new system that our friend RJ has written called Action. Um, and episodes for that will be coming out soon too. Um, I think that's all the news I can share right now. So yeah, I'm on Twitter as well at Carpe Christie.
Fantastic. And I'm Nikki. I use she, her pronouns. I am the producer here at TRPG, and I'm also a fifth grade teacher. I am currently raising funds on Donors Choose to buy stuff for my classroom for the fall. If I don't make enough, if I don't hit the number that I need to, I will end up buying all that stuff myself. Being a teacher is expensive if you want your students to have a nice time, because we're not given a budget as much as we should be. Okay, so coming up, we have so many things in the works. More game designer showcases, some really fun events, and some really cool games. So later this month, we have Emerald Templars Creator Showcase on May 18th, with that D'Angelo and a really awesome cast of people who have GM'd a ton and are great at picking up new games. I'm really excited to run the tech for that. Then we have on the 23rd, which is a Monday, we have our all AAPI one shot of Monster Care Squad, which is a super cute game, and the GM for that is Classical Glyza. I've gotten to play with Glyza before in this game, and it is so much fun. We have premiering soon an all Latine cast of Nahal. I don't know how to say that exactly, but it's a really cool TTRPG about demon hunting angels. Super cool. Can't wait to watch that. The entire cast is Latine, and I trained somebody up on how to run tech, and so the tech person is also Latine, so that'll be really fun, and is playing. So they'll be playing and running tech, and I'm really excited about that. And as Christiana mentioned, we have Avatar Reclamation coming back soon. We also have our last 2 episodes of first season of Age of Wonder, where I play Savannah, aka Vanna, aka Bramble, who is your queer, angry, transformed. And other than that, keep an eye out on my Twitter, because I also have some other cool things that I'm doing with other groups that are not TTRPG. And I'm really pumped for that. So follow TTRPG around the web spaces. Join our Discord if you want to know about casting calls and that sort of thing, since we will post them on Discord before they go on Twitter. A lot of the times we fill them before we even need to go to Twitter. So, all right. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you for tuning in and for sticking out through this exploration of trauma and grief.